Hello, my name is José Luis Nueno. I am the author of the study Bridal Fashion, Sustainable Style, Conscientious Business, which Balmont Barcelona Bridal Fashion Week has commissioned for the edition of this year. Since 2016, we have been publishing these studies. The first of them was Millennial Brides in 2016. The second was the millennial stores, dealing with the issue of stores instead of the customer. Then we went to Generation C, the third study, and then the study of this year, which is this bridal fashion, sustainable style, conscientious business. The original subject that was supposed to be addressed by the study was sustainability. The new environment which requires, in general, for the fashion industry, and it could be demanding also to the bridal fashion industry, the issue of being a sustainable business. Well, when we were in the middle of this execution, we got interrupted abruptly by COVID-19. And COVID-19 has been partly a disruption, not only for the buyers of this industry and the brands of this industry and the brides and grooms themselves, but also for the researchers who have been studying this industry for a long time. Well, the impact of COVID has been very abrupt, as we said, and it has been especially cruel with the bridal industry, since we are discussing about a business that is not typically sold online, as it happens in other areas of fashion where we have had this possibility. The second reason, because the whole customer was confined, followed by a season of social distancing, which has been particularly tough for three industries. One is everything that was related with events, everything that has been around ceremonies and parties, everything that has been related with travel, and everything that has been in connection with the remaining areas of going back to work and getting back to activities. So bridal was particularly affected, and up to 64% of all weddings that were planned for 2020 have been affected by this phenomenon. So by the time that you read this, or you read the report, or that you see this address, we have to realize that we will be above 6 months with this phenomenon and still searching for a solution for it. Now, what we have seen is a number of solutions that grooms and brides have followed, like postponing. This is not about canceling ceremonies. This is about delaying them. It is celebrating them in the intimacy. It is duplicating the intimacy with followed by parties that are postponed with the guests. Probably the most affecting event that we have is the postponement of the wedding travel, which is affecting very much the postponement of the ceremony itself. And this is very different in geographies, it's very different by locations, it's very different for flagships in the industry and small players. And what we know is that this is going to last some time, but in the future it will pass, and this industry will have to come back. Then the issue about the coming back of the bridal industry is that the bridal industry will necessarily come back much more sustainable than it was when it left. And this is the key finding of the study that we have been conducting for Balmont Barcelona Fashion Week. The whole fashion industry is an industry that was demanding since 2013, but with a special intensity prior to the celebration of, prior to the arrival COVID was demanding a more sustainable industry, characterized for three areas, which is efficient use of energy, then the usage of revolutionary materials of higher quality and more sustainable content, and third, the development of an inclusive culture in the key players of the industry, in all the players at all the levels of the industry. In the end, the fashion industry is an industry that more than any other, if all of them have to have it, is an industry that demands inclusivity. Then, after finding our study, what we found is the first idea. No? The first is that the connectedness, the connection that there is with the topic of sustainability and COVID. So it was not very difficult to find that the first reaction of many companies in the fashion industry, if you look at companies in apparel as well as you look in companies of fragrances, is that they started to produce masks, they started to produce hydroalcoholic and other hygienic fluids to make sure that the pandemic was put as far away as possible from the citizens of this world. And what it was very clear is that the natural reaction that the industry found was precisely being much more solidary and much more responsive to society, to the sensitivities of brides and grooms. And it was very clear that this was not only something related with green, something related with the environment, but it has affected several different areas. No? The key four areas that we found that were behind this issue were governance, people and their jobs, the contribution to society, to supply chains that were socially sustainable, the sustainable production, and circular economy, and then the environment. In order to find, to manage these topics and try to find how much they were relevant to the fashion industry, we used three types of methodologies. We had qualitative research, which we conducted with companies and with buyers. Then we also ran a very large quantitative study, which is probably the largest that we know, with the help of Bodasnet, which is one of the e-business, one of the digital networks, platforms that support the fashion business. And we ran a 2,600 brides and grooms study, trying to understand which was their understanding of sustainability and what it meant for them, and how much it was behind the decisions that they were taking. So I'm going to just give you a summary of some of the findings. You will find the study in the web of this event. In addition, there will be copies that will be printed physically, but the results will be probably faster available if you go to the digital support. And what we found are topics which are related with the B2B aspects of the industry, and topics that are related with the consumer side of the business. No? In terms of the first, the key question that we wanted to know is how ingrained is already the topic of sustainability among the players in the business, among large brands and small brands, large retailers and small retailers. And what we found is that the medium-sized and large brands of the bridal business are the ones that show in the beginning a little bit more conscientiousness in terms of the topic that exists. And this is something that we expected, because it happens everywhere in the fashion industry. In the fashion industry, companies that have more resources are companies that are much more capable of devoting some of these resources to the practices of sustainability, to organizing these areas, these 4 areas that I already mentioned. Now, 80% of the companies that we surveyed were companies that had sales of less than 10 million, which is very characteristic of the fashion business. It's not a business of very large companies. It's a business which is much more centered in smaller corporations. And among these corporations, what we find, they are in what we could call a pre-phase of sustainability. So they are conscious, they are preparing their prototypes, some experiments in order to become more sustainable, but still they are not investing in a very decisive fashion in becoming much more sustainable. No? So most of the executives that we interviewed were really very understood the topic, understood even their dimensions, knew that this was not only about being green, that the other issues, that governance, that social, that financial sustainability are dimensions that are very important, but still they are warming the engines in terms of entering in this. When we go to the smaller companies, when we go to the small companies, companies that are under this 10 million threshold that we were discussing, what we find is that there is a dichotomy here. No? What we could call the champions, and we could discuss about the completely inactive. No? So among the small companies, what you have is a majority of companies that have not already embraced the concept of sustainability, and then you have a few companies that are what we could call the champions. And the champions, because being very small, they were born with the tenets and the topic of sustainability in their culture. So all the companies that are fully committed to sustainability are small companies. But they are only a small fraction of small companies. Most small companies are completely unaware of the topic, and they need to get aware, to become much more aware for them, because we contend, and we found in the study, what this industry is missing is lots of opportunities of differentiation, of becoming different from your peers. No? And we have seen that these small companies that are very sustainability conscious are companies also, many of them at least, are very successful. Maybe there are many others that didn't respond to our study, that we have not identified through other means, that have failed. But what we found is that the few that we identified as very active are companies that are also very successful, they are growing, and they are being benefited by being different by being sustainable. So this is something that the companies also have to have. Then we conducted this survey that I told you, which is unique, and you will have all the results in the study, with brides. And we asked them how important was for them when they chose their dress, that the dress was sustainable. Well, and you can imagine that the result was a little bit meager too, the results. But we were more interested in finding out what was the ranking of sustainability topics and how were they perceived as more or less important by brides, rather than to the total importance that the topic has. We conducted the study in Brazil, Spain, France, Italy, Mexico, and the United Kingdom. And the first topic of sustainability that was very important for brides and grooms was that the dress that came from, that they were buying, came from a supply chain that had dignity in the jobs and good salaries for the people that had made this kind of dress. So the issue of slavery and social injustice, the dresses being made by underage labor, are things that really concern very much, are the things that concern much more brides. And this is very important in an event like the event that we have, where we have a large number of attendants online that are European companies and North American companies, that they realize that this is a fantastic opportunity, because we can discuss we cannot really discuss about labor injustice in this industry when we talk about proximity to the westernized markets. The closer that you are to a European market, the closer that you are to a US market in your production, the higher the likelihood that the salaries are going to be above the threshold of dignity and are going to be social. No? Animal welfare was the second point. They didn't want to have garments that have been tested in animals or had used animals in an unsustainable fashion. No? Then the transparent supply chains. This is a very important issue. They want to know the merchandise that they buy, where does it come from? It's not necessarily that they explain them this, but if they ask, the person that is selling to them, the company that is selling to them, has to have a response. Local production is something that is very important for the brides. So you see that really we were very surprised to see that raw materials and sustainable fabrics, which is probably the most connected, and the use of energy, which are the most connected to green, come very much farther down in the list of things that are important for the brides. The brides really want to have that the clothes that they have has been properly produced, and that the people that have been involved in this are people that have a good life for doing this, executing this merchandise that they are going to have in their the day that they will never forget of their lives, the day of their wedding. No? So this was one of the important things that we found in terms of this scale. In general, there are 4 big recommendations or 4 big insights that we would like to share. There are many more in the study, and you can go to them very soon. And the first one was that, this is something that we expected to see, brides and grooms are not willing to pay more for the sustainable merchandise that they buy. So they consider that if the merchandise is sustainable, because it has to be sustainable, then it has to be at market prices and with no premiums whatsoever. No? The second insight, which is a very important one too, is that it is very important that the industry increases the level of information that they give about these practices. No? There are many companies that are doing things that could be characterized as sustainable, and there are others that they cannot advertise this type of things, but they should, because the level of the consumer is willing to know about things, and the top concern that they have is that they don't have the right information in terms of how sustainable are their companies. No? The third idea is that diversity and inclusion is something that brides also demand from the industry. So those would be the top issues. No? And then the overall question is that we were asking if the industry of bridal is a sustainable one from the point of view of the bride, and the consumers, they didn't respond negatively about what they responded, as I said before, is that they lacked the information in order to take a decision, but there was a background of demand that the companies in the industry, in all the fashion industry, and in bridal, as one of the facets of this industry, should be more responsible than what they are. So the study concludes with a number of recommendations which are addressed in the different areas that we were discussing, are addressed in in the recommendations in the social area with, in terms of employees, recommendations in terms of the responsible supply chain and how it should be monitored, how the merchandise should be traceable, the own merchandise, the merchandise that is bought from others should be traceable as well. The practices of procurement should be also monitored, this is demands that have to do with the perceptions that the brides had. It's not that the brides told us that you have to be traceable, you have to trace your merchandise, but what they said is that they felt that it was very important that socially companies were very competent. No? And then there are recommendations in terms of sustainable production, circular economy, and the environment, and the ones that have to do with contribution socially and to the community. And in terms of contribution socially and to the community, all the brides that we interviewed were very conscious of initiatives like Save the Children, we have just heard a minute ago. And they knew this kind of charities, they knew this kind of social institutions, and they were asking their suppliers to make a step ahead also in the area of this contribution to society and to the community. Well, so this is basically what I wanted to share with you. Thank you for having me, and until next time.